Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. The first split of the North American VCT challenges is over. The face-off teams have now been confirmed, 8 of them. Questionable format. We'll dive into everything that happened though last night in a second. But also EG Ethan giving his thoughts on Sentinels, saying they might well be right now the scariest team in North America. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you guys are new. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, from Zach Zekin over at Sentinels, he guessed the other day that Ethos was going to be the replacement for Thryfo, and it turns out this actually might be the case. If you guys look here, this is the public VCT database, basically, which looks at which players are assigned to which teams. You guys can see under NRG that Thryfo is still appearing for now, but we know that he's been kind of released and is now an inactive player and unrestricted free agent. But Ethos has been added here, so kind of a content guy for them. There were some questions that whether this guy was going to step up to be effectively their substitute player, and apparently that is basically what they're doing now. So kind of a strange turn of events, but I guess they need to sign someone, so that is their solution to this problem they currently find themselves in, or probably not anymore based on this. And it seems like Ethos here and also NRG Chet having a bit of a interesting predicament as well. So yeah, hopefully that's well, all good and works out for all parties, but certainly would be an interesting turn of events if and when potentially NRG might well need a substitute at some point. There would be it would be interesting to see nonetheless. Now also confirmation, finally, a bit of a weird turn of events, this whole cNed thing. He of course left crew last season to sit on the bench and do nothing, and now he's back on crew. So makes obviously perfect sense, but cNed is now back officially on crew esports, so an expected change, one that has now been officially confirmed. Also wanted to mention this from Vanity though, since NA Valorant is so entertaining last night, and kind of some spoilers here for the SR versus G2 game we're going to discuss in a few minutes from the background of Vanity's stream, but pretty expected result regardless. Vanity though mentions that during the off-season they were considering options for their roster, and that they were quite close Cloud9, where Vanity was before of course the recent drama, to getting Nats. He ended up joining Liquid of course, but could you imagine if they actually signed Nats for a lot of money, they signed Ye for a lot of money, and then they made various other situations and changes as well. Like Nats must be almost counting his lucky stars, because if he was here he probably also got the Ye treatment, given the fact that they're trying to cut costs right now.
What European played Bronze for a long time? Dirk. We almost got Nats on Cloud9 in the offseason. I don't think that's ever been leaked. We were kind of close.
So it would have been quite the turn of events, right, if Nats was to have actually joined Cloud9 instead. I mean, look, they could have probably formed a better team than they did if they had have actually got Nats into the roster. But at the same time, given the circumstances that have now transpired, Nats is probably rather happy that, well, things worked out as they did, and he's on Liquid, and he doesn't have to deal with the situation that Ye and Vanity are currently going through, where they are struggling to find potential new opportunities. We saw yesterday that Vanity said that himself and Ye have had an offer from somewhere, potentially, to go as a duo to somewhere, which is a pretty interesting prospect. But yeah, Nats, okay, Liquid aren't great right now, but at least he's still got a job at the present time. That doesn't potentially have to deal with what might well have happened had he have joined at Cloud9 all that time ago. Now, Ethan says this about Sentinels: enjoy Tokyo Sentinels. Now, we know from what Chet said, the coach of NRG, the other day, that right now the pro teams can't really practice against the tier 2 teams as they used to do at the start of the season, because Gecko is not yet enabled. So the new patch update is going to be here by the time the pros play. When their matchups come around, they're playing on the new patch update, they're playing with Gecko in play. But right now, the tier 2 teams are still playing without Gecko. Therefore, the tier 2 teams aren't practicing with him. So teams like, Evil Geniuses and others can't really play G2. They can't really play FaZe, can't play M80, can't play the guards, which obviously teams that would give good practice, because they aren't playing the same patch right now. The Challengers guys don't want to scrim with Gecko because they're not playing with him. The tier 1 guys don't want to play without Gecko, and therefore they kind of resigned to playing against each other, which isn't ideal. They would prefer to play against the tier 2 competition, because tier 2 teams, M80, the guards, still of course very good indeed, and would provide very good competition and good practice for these guys. Evil Geniuses have some advantage in that they have a second team, they have their primary roster, they have their secondary 5-man roster, so they can practice against each other, so they don't give away ideas to their top competition in their own league. league. So at the end of the day, though, they've had to bite the bullet a little bit, these pro teams, and say, you know what, we will practice against these other teams that we shall play quite shortly, really, on LAN and in an important matchup. So they don't want to give anything away necessarily, but at the same time, it's a problem that, you know, they've got to deal with. So Ethan says, enjoy Tokyo Sentinels. And of course, what this implies is that Evil Geniuses played Sentinels in some sort of scrim set behind the scenes, or got absolutely bodied. Now, is that a surprise? How good are Evil Geniuses really? Are they getting bodied by most teams? Maybe not though, right? Because he's singling out Sentinels as the team to stop right now. And obviously enjoy Tokyo, referring to Masters that's in Tokyo relatively soon. 3 teams out of the 10 in the Americas qualify for Masters. And of course, Loud, having made the grand finals in all the way back in Sao Paulo, not that long ago really, they are going to be favorites, I guess, from the Americas to qualify. So that leaves, you could say, 2 spots up for grabs, and maybe NRG would be the second favorites, and then maybe there's another team in the ballpark that's going to have to make it, and could be a Leviathan, or could be any team from the Americas, or could well be Sentinels. And Ethan is confident enough to say that Sentinels are the team that's going to be enjoying Tokyo, and maybe therefore implying that they are his favorites from at least the North American scene, maybe even better right now as it stands than NRG themselves. Now, Sentinels lost to Fnatic. They didn't win a map at the tournament. They went out quite quickly. Haven was 13-6, I believe. Split was 13-7. So, you know, not the greatest performance from Sentinels, but at the same time, this was the first match they played. They got blown out, kind of. Zekken had a tough one, but they did play against Fnatic, right? The team that ended up winning the tournament. Fnatic didn't lose a map all the way until the grand finals. They were practically untouchable, and that was always one of the problems with this format, was like we didn't really get to know how good some of these teams are. Sentinels, as I said, they aren't the second best team in the world, but, you know, they theoretically could have been and could be, just because they played the team that ended up winning in the very first round, so they didn't really get to show what they could do against anybody else, rather than playing an incredibly good Fnatic team that are clearly the best team in the world at the present time. So what do you guys think about this? Are Sentinels as good as Ethan is implying, or is there potentially other teams that are still even better in the North American side? But maybe they've improved Sentinels a lot since Sao Paulo, and they made the return from that tournament. Let's talk tier 2 then, because last night G2 played SR. This was such a comfortable series for G2, and I don't know what B-Dog's shooting at right here. Like, the guy needs to get a new mouse or something, because, I mean, look at this. He comes through the Viper's pit to try and get this kill on ShahZaM while he's reloading and misses everything, and ShahZaM gets the kill with the classic. Like, yeah, not pretty at all. Already down 8-0 at that point. SR does look pretty terrible, and this is it's a bit of a surprise in a way, because this core has been together so long, but they just don't get the results, and you'd think that over time they'd get better, but they've just been super underwhelming this split, to be honest. The second series was Turtle Troop versus Oxygen. Got to mention on the Turtle Troop stuff, because we were quite convinced at some point recently that xQc was going to sign Turtle Troop, because we thought, okay, Breakthrough have gone to Moist Moguls, Turtle Troop are going to go to xQc, but maybe xQc said, hey, you know what, this is what Tarek mentions, we'll show here in a second, like, if they qualify for the face-off, then sure, I'll pay them the money, but if they actually aren't good enough to do that, then why would xQc sign these guys? Maybe he will, maybe he won't, maybe it's just taken a long time, or maybe he's backed out of the transaction now that they lost to Oxygen and therefore failed to qualify for the face-off tournament in the middle of the season. Oxygen won, that was big for FaZe as well, that means they qualified. Close series, went to game 3, but Oxygen in the end took them down on split, and that got the job done, as dapr says, GG's versus Shopify, and I'll share the final moments here from what Tarek has to say.
I almost feel like xQc might have said, like, hey, if you guys qualify for MSI, I'll sign you. Like, is that the case, or is it just slow?
Why is it 1v2? Mommy!
A massive choke from the Turtle Boys! xQc beginning to second guess his investment here. As the 500k leaves his bank account, he realizes that he actually doesn't give a so he signs him anyway. Take it, Chad.
It's so difficult again. The Stinger is still alive here, but Mummy's just
traded. We did.
Off the showstopper.
He has
Both
armor.
Players going into elbow. We did.
Oh.
What can he do here?
Oh.
He does. Waiting for the first. He gets spotted. It's a 1v4 for Weeded. Such a tall task, and he's gonna go down. The The final breath has been taken.
Bro, xQc might have to burn the contracts. I agree. He might have to burn the contracts.
Try something explosive.
So a close series between Turtle Troop and Oxygen Esports. In the end, they just go down. Oxygen just a little bit too strong on this one. Of course, Turtle Troop made some changes lately. Mame came in, Take came in, and okay, they're making some progress. They won Lotus 14-12. They lost 17-15, a crazy game on Ascent, and then split just went Oxygen's way 39. Really closely matched teams. Turtle Troop could have done it. They didn't know, and that leaves the groups looking, as we'll see in a second. Just to mention quickly the stats here from the G2 series, not pretty at all. Marder 12-36, and B-Dog individually has not been quite the same player since the Chambers disappeared, it's got to be said. I know that he was on the Sage here, which isn't ideal, but you know, and Oxy was really doing his thing, man. This Oxy guy is seriously good. 13-8, 13-4. Icebox was the real demolition job on the first side, which you don't usually see on that, well, map mode combination on the defense, let's say. That therefore leaves the groups looking like this. Group B was already confirmed the other day. G2 4-1. That confirms them as the number 1 seed going through, which gives them some degree of advantage. We'll see in a second. Moist Moguls, Oxygen, and then FaZe, just because, well, FaZe beat Turtle Troops, they win their head-to-head, so they managed to go through, luckily enough, and these are the Group B standings as well. That therefore leaves the upper quarterfinals looking like this. And I've got to say, I don't fully understand why this is the way the seeding has been done, because surely it makes more sense in my mind to go 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 from each respective group. But they haven't done that right. So in my mind, I would have this as being G2 versus Disguised, Moist Moguls versus TSM, Oxygen versus the Guards, and M80 versus FaZe. Like, surely that is the most sensible approach. But instead, they do have Moist Moguls versus TSM, but instead they have M80 versus Disguised from the same group, and then they have the Guard versus, I think, FaZe. We'll come back to it here in a second. The Guard FaZe, and then TSM Moist Moguls. Like, I don't really know how they've managed to see this. Like, G2 play Oxygen, which is 1 in 3 in their pool. Like, I don't understand how the seeding makes sense in that sense. And I feel bad for Disguise because they have to play M80. So, I mean, that ain't looking good round 1. And the teams that win this tournament, or, well, place in this tournament, get additional points towards their circuit points, which puts them even further ahead of the teams that failed to qualify for this. Now, there are more points up for grabs in the second split, so the teams that didn't qualify here can theoretically still make it through to the playoffs, but it's not going to be easy. All these teams get additional points towards doing so, which the teams that didn't qualify aren't able to get. But at least there's some sort of actual tournament here, rather than just they play forever with no champion. So these are the 4 matches. Don't exactly understand quite how they've seeded this, but nonetheless, there's some interesting games. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.